Hi, I'm Caden, here with my brother,
Cal,
and you're watching Eating W's.
eat the W.
That's a W. Let's eat one. Let's eat one. That's a W.
On today's episode of Eating W's, the long-awaited day has finally arrived. It is time for Callan and I's first and last and official predictive mock drafts for the 2026 NFL Draft. It has been a while. Thank you all for all the support. I've seen a couple of different comments saying, where are these guys? These guys got to come back. It is truly heartwarming to see. Thank you so much for that. And we are back. And is there a better time right now than the week before the draft? We are recording this on Thursday, the 16th. So we are exactly 1 week away from draft night. And it's 6:45, so coming up pretty close to exactly 1 week away from draft night, so pretty exciting there. But as I mentioned, it is finally here. Callan and I each have done one mock draft. Well, I've only done one. I think Callan's done a couple.
I've done a few different ones, but I have done a final one.
But this is each of our final and only mock drafts for this season. Today, we're going to have my mock draft. Tomorrow, you're going to see an episode with Callan's mock draft. And I'm not going to lie, I set this thing up last night and I am feeling good about it. The way the board fell, the way I was able to kind of connect some things with the rumors, the way I was able to just a little bit weasel someone into the Vikings, in my opinion. I am just so happy with this draft overall. So without further ado, we're going to jump right into it with Caden's official mock draft for 2026. And the first overall pick is the first overall pick that you've seen about everywhere at this point. It's, of course, Fernando Mendoza. Who else would it be? I mean, this is probably the most obvious pick or most locked in first overall pick that I can think of in a very long time. Because, I mean, at least since maybe Trevor Lawrence, I feel like Trevor Lawrence was pretty locked in as well, the prophet that he was going to be. Same with Burrow, but Burrow in 20, Trevor Lawrence in 2021 were both pretty obvious. But then 2022, you had Trayvon Walker, and you didn't really know about that draft because it was so bad. You didn't know who they were going to end up taking first. 2023 was Bryce Young. You had the debate versus him and CJ Stroud. 24 was Caleb Williams, who you also had Jaden Daniels. You had Drake May, all kind of jumping for that first overall spot. Cam Ward was a similar situation in 2025 where the Titans were so bad that they could have done anything. So this is the first time in a long time that we've truly had a obvious lock-in pick. So not much to say about it. It's Fernando Mendoza. Jumping to number 2 and where the draft kind of starts, but this one's a little more obvious in my opinion as well because there's only 2 people it can really be. The Jets are going to take an edge rusher. Aaron Glenn is their head coach. They had terrible pass rush last year. There's not a top corner or safety on the board that you really feel good taking at number 2. So you're looking at David Bailey out of Texas Tech or Arvell Reese out of Ohio State. A lot of people and a lot of experts I've seen recently have taken David Bailey here, but I don't like that because the kind of really good thing about Bailey is he can definitely get a little better, but I feel like the good thing about him is the floor. He's already ready as a pass rusher to go. But I think you look at a guy like Arvell Reese, who I have the Jets taking here, and yes, there is a chance that he's maybe just a inside linebacker, off-ball linebacker. At the very least, he's a very, very good off-ball linebacker. But he has just an insane amount of upside as a pass rusher. And the Jets aren't really in a win-now situation. So why not take the guy who has so much more upside as a pass rusher and lock in Arvell Reese here, especially considering Reese has a little bit more of that traditional size you look for compared to an undersized Bailey.
Yeah, I agree with this. I guess is there a chance they take Carnell Tate here?
I've heard some things where Carnell Tate's range starts at 2, but I don't know. I don't think he's good. I don't think he's that much ahead of the other receivers.
Yeah,
he is my number 1 in the class, but I don't think
he's
that much better. The only thing is,
do the Jets fall in love with him because of their success with Garrett Wilson and the Ohio State wide receivers that have come out? Because they've all performed pretty well. Even Marvin Harrison Jr. has probably been the least productive of all of them, and it's still pretty productive.
Which is crazy because he was supposed to be just an absolute prophet, to say the least.
But Arvell Reese or David Bailey, each one's probably the safer pick. It's just whichever one you think they're going to prefer, and you go with Arvell Reese here.
Yeah, you go from an obvious pick to a 50-50 pick. Maybe like 48-48 for however that would line up.
Unless they shock the world and go Carnell Tate.
Exactly. Now, number 3 here is where the draft really starts, in my opinion. And I have it starting off with a bang because I actually have the Cardinals moving out of this pick. Looking at the Cardinals, I think that they're most they have a lot of needs. Let's be honest. They have a lot of needs. But I think their most present need is at offensive tackle or offensive line in general. And I really like Francis Maui-Noa. And I think that guys like Fano and maybe even like a Monroe Freeling could maybe go really high, but not top 3. They're just not up there enough. So I actually have the Cardinals getting some additional value in trading out of that number 3 pick with kind of a shocking team, none other than the Washington Commanders. Now, the only thing that makes this a little crazy is, as you can see here, the Commanders don't have a ton of picks in general, let alone a kind of pick that you could make a move with this on. But they aren't moving up a ton of spots, only moving up about 4 spots to get up here. It's definitely going to be a first-round pick next year, maybe even a little more. Or, it's actually saying go the other way. So we'll add a little bit from the Cardinals down here. Of course, we're not going to go through and talk about exactly how everything's going to go. We're just going to get it to a way that it'll actually let us make the trade. Because remember our episodes last year?
They were very difficult.
We could not make trades to save our lives because it wouldn't push them through.
And it wouldn't give any info on them.
Exactly. This website we use, PFSN, I actually really like it. Free trades, free everything. So it's really nice there. And now, as you just saw there, they added a feature that let you know when the trade would be accepted or not, which is a lifesaver for doing trades. But back to the actual draft, the Washington Commanders move up here. And it's funny because now I look at this as another coin flip. If they actually do move up, it could be for David Bailey. Very questionable defense and pass rush for the Commanders last year. Dan Quinn, defensive-minded head coach. But I actually have them hitting the other side of the coin and getting a running mate with Jaden Daniels and picking up Jeremiah Love, the running back out of Notre Dame. I think looking at this, kind of the consensus for him, or the most likely landing spot for him recently, with both experts and everyday people like us alike, has been going to the Titans at 4 for Jeremiah Love. So the Washington Commanders jump up here. They realize that they are still in a win now window. I mean, it's funny. If you look at it, they didn't even make the playoffs last year because of some injuries from Jaden Daniels, some injuries from the receiving corps, and the receiving corps in general not being very good. But it kind of made you forget that the year before that, they were an NFC championship team with a rookie Jaden Daniels at quarterback. So I think that they are still very much in a win now mode, and you take a win now pick like Jeremiah Love to re-spark that offense where Bill Jacoski-Merritt wasn't really the hype that everyone put him up to be. He kind of, you realize after the first couple of weeks that he was a 7th round pick, which he did very good for a 7th round pick. I'm not trying to talk crap on Bill, but you need a more elite running back, and that is exactly what Jeremiah Love is.
Yes, this would be a shocking trade if the Commanders were able to jump up here and not only take Love or Bailey, but either one would be a shock just because of you don't expect them to be the ones to move up. But from a lot of talks from the GMs have come out that said they expect a lot of trades to happen in this first round this year. And that's because of the different values that each team has for each player here, because it's such an up and down draft, a mix of second round tiers and not a lot of first round tier talent. And because of that, you get guys that reach, guys that get desperate, or teams that get desperate for guys. And maybe this is a desperation move. We'll see. But if it is the move the Commanders make, it's a hell of a move, because I think Jeremiah Love is going to be a potential NFL Offensive Rookie of the Year candidate right off the bat.
Yeah, exactly. I do have a good number of trades in my mock draft. Don't get too like unrealistic by any means, but I do have a good number of trades. But yeah, the really tough one for the Commanders here is they'd have to, will very likely have to give up that 2027 first round pick, which is a bad year to give up a first round pick
Mm-hmm.
in. We're anticipating a very good class next year. But you can kind of look at it and say, are we going to get a, I'm going to say generational talent, if not at the very least borderline generational talent, wherever we end up picking next year. So I think it's kind of worth it to move up, give up that first round pick next year and get Jeremiah Love here. And then now this is just, I mean, the Titans are in a win-win spot because they need so many things, and it's almost guaranteed that at least one top player falls to them, whether it's Love, whether it's Bailey or Reese, whether it's maybe Cardell Tate falls to them because they also need some receiver help.
Mm-hmm.
But right now, it ends up being David Bailey. Robert Saleh's first draft as a head coach here in Tennessee. Go get yourself a Robert Saleh type speed rusher, someone with just such a motor, someone who has a great floor right now as a pass rusher and could just keep going. He's got a ton of upside. If I'm not mistaken, I think he's not crazy young, but a little on the younger end, either 21 or 22. So a lot of room to grow for him still, and just such a good guy to learn from there in Robert Saleh. So I think you absolutely sprint this pick to the podium if you're the Tennessee Titans, because that's just such a good pickup for them.
Yeah, they kind of get bummed because they lose out on Jeremiah Love and have to figure out that running back situation now. But they get a hell of a player in David Bailey. I almost call him David Reese. Mixing them together again. But
the super athlete.
The super athlete. But you get a heck of a player here in David Bailey, and really, in my estimation, the more pure pass rusher compared to Arvell Reese, who has played more inside, kind of similar to the Giants last year's first round pick, Abdul Carter, who played some inside and then switched to edge. So kind of interesting. Both New York teams went with that type of player in this draft. But as far as David Bailey goes for the Titans, it's a steal for them and a great value pick for the Titans to pick up their star edge rusher for the new Robert Saleh defense.
Yeah, I've actually never thought about that comparison because Avell Reese in his final year was his first time he got any pass rush snaps, and that's the exact same thing for Abdul Carter. So I almost wonder if I really like Abdul Carter. I think that towards the end of the year, he really started to show up a little bit more, and I think as we go into next year, he'll do a lot better. But I wonder if that kind of slow start from Carter weans people off of Avell Reese at all. Yeah. I don't think it should. As you can see here, I think the Jets take him at 2, but I wonder if that is something to factor in. But moving on to the other New York team in the aforementioned New York Jets, looking at them right now, they actually have a pretty solid young roster, in my opinion. I think that there's a very good chance if Jeremiah Love is still here at 5, they go him and try to rekindle a little bit what they did when they took Saquon way back when in 2018. But for now, Jeremiah Love is already off the board. I think a lot of people have them going Sonny Styles, because he very much fits what they do on that defense. I heard a lot of rumors recently that they're looking for offensive line, but since they just recently re-signed Jermaine Illuminor at that right tackle position, I'm actually going to have them locking in the top receiver in the draft. With a young quarterback like Jackson Dart, you go and get some weapons for him. You got Malik Neighbors coming back, but he's coming back off injury. There could be some questions there. You lost Wan'Dale Robinson in the offseason. Go get yourself another guy who can play on the outside and just win. And that's what Carnell Tate can do. He might not have the most upside in this draft when it comes to all the receivers, but he's far and away the safest pick and definitely has the most prototypical build for a receiver in this draft.
Yeah, he's definitely probably the top receiver in this draft. Another Ohio State wide receiver where they just keep kicking him out every year. And the big one's next year. We'll see where he goes. But as far as this one goes, going to 5 to the Giants, I'm not surprised here because like you said, I expect the Giants to get a lot of weapons for Jackson Dart because he was able to carry them through a couple wins even without Malik Neighbors. So think if they had some firepower to go on along with that strong running game with Cam Scatterbo running through walls for the Giants still, we'll see how long that lasts. But as long as the players don't get hurt, I think the Giants could be a surprise team next year.
I completely agree. So much young talent on that roster. I think a really promising future there in New York. So now moving on to the Cleveland Browns. I have seen a lot of things for the Cleveland Browns here. There's not really a consensus pick, and that's because they have so many needs right now. And the way the draft board falls in those top 5 is so different. Pretty much any mock draft you see, and probably even different from what we'll see on mock night. I'm sure something crazy will happen in that top 5. But right here, I have my first little bit of true shock in this one. I haven't seen a ton of people do this, if at all. I actually have the Cleveland Browns going with Ruben Bain Jr., the edge rusher out of Miami. Now, I know that there was just some allegations that came out earlier this week, or I guess not allegations because they were proven true, but I should say a news article that came out about something that happened to him last year where he was the driver in a car accident that ended up killing one of the passengers. But even though this was news to us, from what I've heard and what I understand, this isn't news to NFL teams. I think a lot of teams already know this, and I just don't really think it's going to affect his draft stock. And I look at the Browns here. They could go left tackle. That's probably their biggest need right now is a left tackle. But there's not really a true, really good left tackle that wouldn't be a reach in my opinion right here. So they end up grabbing just a little bit of a faller here in Ruben Bain and get a running mate with Myles Garrett that they haven't had since Jadeveon Clowney, Zadarius Smith. Those are the last 2 guys I could think of that were 2 like bona fide edge rushers. Yeah. So yeah, get him somebody. I don't think that the short arm thing is really going to matter. The way he uses his arms, even though they are short, is really impressive. And I've seen a lot of people talk about the arms. There isn't the greatest track record in the past with edge rushers with short arms, but somebody's got to break that trend eventually, and I think it happens here.
Yeah, I think Ruben Bain is one of the ones that falls this year in this draft because of the past incident that happened. And the only thing is you worry about is that's involuntary manslaughter. I'm pretty sure that's jail time, but I don't know. Maybe you can pay your way out of it.
The family didn't press charges.
They didn't press charges, so maybe that's different then. I'm not sure how it really works, but I just thought that just from what I know about law and from my high school knowledge. But as far as him going to the Browns, that would be quite the pickup for the Browns because I think he's going to be a really good player, even with those short arms. I think that he is the one that breaks the trend because he's going to have all the single one-on-one blocks because they're going to be paying attention to Myles Garrett, and it's going to be up to Ruben Bain to cause havoc on that other side of Myles Garrett and maybe even get some blocks off of Myles Garrett if he starts to produce. So if he really is as good as he was in college, then look out for those edge rushers for the Browns.
Yeah, 2 years in a row here, the Browns go defensive line with a top 10 pick. They took Mason Graham at 5 last year, of course. So that could be a scary, scary pass rush, all said and done, if they grab Ruben Bain here. So now moving on to Cardinals, which, in my opinion, have quite literally already won the draft right here with this pick. They moved down 4 spots, and they're still able to get one of their biggest positions in need with right tackle, and very arguably one of the best tackles in this draft with Francis Maui-Noa. Like I said, you move down from 3. You might have taken him there, but now you gain a first-round pick next year likely and still get the same guy you might have taken, one of the biggest needs on your team. Just an absolute win for the Cardinals here. Sprint that card up to the podium type thing. Really good board fall for them.
Yeah, it is. They get a heck of a player, the top offensive lineman in the draft, top offensive tackle, and Francis Maui-Noa, and another winner who came from that Miami, Florida national championship team. Back-to-back Miami, Florida players. You haven't seen that in a while where they were able to put out some NFL talent because when they have NFL talent, you can see they go far in the playoffs. So it's too bad that they're losing all this talent for the Hurricanes, but it'll be look good for future prospects, especially if these guys are able to pan out and be good NFL players.
100%. Now, moving on to the 8th overall pick with the New Orleans Saints, I think that this might be the pick that I struggled with the most, or at the very least spent the most time on. I mean, I had 4 different depth charts up. I took like 15 minutes, 20 minutes to make this pick alone. I was absolutely struggling to decide what I wanted to do. And I decided that the Saints just don't have any prominent enough needs with how the board fell compared to what they need to go get. So I actually have them trading back here. The team that I have them trading back with, or more likely what I mean, is the team that I have calling them and trading up is none other than the Dallas Cowboys. I got the Dallas Cowboys coming up because, I mean, they are looking for a splash right here. And I have seen so many reports of one guy they're going for. I don't think I I don't think they give up 20. I don't know how they do it exactly, but I think they find a way to keep that 20th overall pick. Again, like I said, I'm not going too crazy with getting too specific about the way everything falls. But all I'm saying is I think that they do find a way to move up here, but still keep 20. So I'm going to make it so they keep 20 in this trade right here. And the guy that I've been hearing a lot about and the rumors is I think they really like Mansoor Delane. And you look at the board right here, you got the Chiefs, who are very likely to take a top cornerback. You got the Bengals, who are very likely to take a top cornerback. And you got the Dolphins, who are in the running to take a top cornerback. So if you love Mansoor Delane, I don't think he makes it to you at 12. So you give up some draft capital, you go get kind of a new, really good corner. They've had a couple of corners in the past years who have been just absolute burning out stars. I mean, you got Deron Bland broke the pick 6 record. You got Trayvon Diggs broke the interception record in single season for both of those guys. But where are they now? Trayvon Diggs isn't even on a team, if I'm not mistaken, right now. And Deron Bland was hurt all of last year and is kind of questionable on if he'll even be on the Cowboys roster much moving forward. So you got to go get a guy. You get the top cornerback who played last year, in my opinion. I think Jermod McCoy is a better cornerback, but for the Cowboys, they still feel they're in a win now mode. You go with the safer pick, and you go with the guy who did play last year, and Mansoor Delane.
Yeah, this would be a shocker if the Cowboys moved up here, especially for this player with what's on the board. When you still got Sonny Styles and Caleb Downs on the board, and they go with a corner here and go Delaney. So this will be very interesting if this falls this way. And the Cowboys, they actually, I believe, just extended Deron Bland a couple years ago.
Did they after that season with the pick 6s?
Yeah, so I believe they're stuck with at least him for sure. But they need to rebuild that cornerback room because they're just too aggressive, and they've learned often the coordinators have learned how to beat that aggressiveness. You need some balance here, and this is one of the most balanced corners in the draft. I think that he'll be an outstanding player for the Cowboys, whether he lines up, whether most likely on the outside, but I think he could play the slot.
100%. This is a little less what I do and a little more rumor predictive leaning, which my whole draft is rumor predictive leaning, hence why I did it. But I probably wouldn't make this move, but I think it's something that the Cowboys definitely could do. So I'm moving on to the Chiefs here at 9. A guy that they might have taken just got absolutely snagged out in front of them. But when I think about the Chiefs, when I look back, every time this team has been bad, and I think even though these weren't bad teams, the 2 Super Bowls you look at that they lost back against the Buccaneers and then most recently against the Eagles, the common thread between all of those and last year when they just weren't up to snuff like they used to be was poor offensive line play. So I think right here, the Chiefs take a guy who's been a little bit of a draft riser recently with Utah offensive tackle Spencer Fano. And the big reason about this guy is, I mean, he's very good. Don't get me wrong. He is a very, very talented offensive tackle. Right tackle is what he played all year at Utah last year. But my favorite thing about him, and I think the best part about the Chiefs, is this is one of those true do-it-all guys. Before he played right tackle last year, he was Utah's left tackle up until Caleb Lomu, a guy that you'll see later in this draft, came to Utah. When Lomu came to Utah, he slotted in at left tackle Fano moved over to right tackle and was just as good, if not probably better at right tackle. And a lot of experts say he actually more projects as a guard. So you get a guy who's going to do it all, who's willing to do it all. He said it at the combine. I mean, it always kind of cracks me up when the reporters at the combine ask these tackles if they're willing to play guard, and it's like, dude, I'm going to the NFL. I'll run out there and play tight end if you need me to.
Yeah,
like,
especially offensive linemen.
Just get me on the field. But nonetheless, he said it at the combine that he'll play anything. I think it's a really good pick in just great depth or possibly starter. Because I mean, I'm blanking on his name now, but they signed a right tackle this year. But it's a guy who doesn't really have much playtime experience and is only signed to a 1-year contract. So does that actually work out at all? If not for anything past next year, you just don't know. So I think Fano is a great backup contingency plan and a possible right now improvement.
Yes, I've seen Fano play a couple times, watching some Utah games over the past season, and their offensive line was one of the best in the NCAA, and that was led by these two guys, Spencer Fano and Caleb Lomu. And Fano, probably the one that goes first, reminds me a lot of Elton Jenkins in his prime, because he was able to play guard, tackle, center, and he was his best as a guard, but he played as a tackle in college, and his best in the NFL, and it became a guard. So Fano, I could see follow a very similar trajectory here, and him be a very top tier guard for the Chiefs and a possible eventual right tackle.
100%. Yeah, he is just so athletic. I really like Spencer Fano. I think he's very deserved to move up boards the way he has recently. Now we fall here to the Cincinnati Bengals, and we look at the Bengals. You just take defense. Whoever you deem to be the best defensive player available, you take him
like their team
in
names.
a heartbeat. Yeah, exactly.
Defensive line, safety, linebacker, edge, corner.
There's no better way to explain it than right there. So what I actually have them doing here, Sonny Styles is staring them in the face, which is very tempting. But I think the way that they run their defense, with the way they've drafted in the past, and with what is kind of the biggest needs for them, I think that they actually end up going Caleb Downs over Sonny Styles. Both of these guys are absolutely falling right now, but the Caleb Downs slide ends earlier. I just think he's that perfect do-it-all strong safety. He does some of his best play in the box, but he's also able to move back and play more of that two-high safety. He doesn't do great in single high. That's just not his game, but it doesn't have to be your game. You're a strong safety, not a free safety. Let the free safety play single high. But I think he does his best work in the box. You can slot him in at nickel. You can slot him in at strong safety. He's just so versatile and a really fun piece to use.
Yeah, this would be quite the fall for Caleb Downs, who was projected to be one of the top picks. And the only issue with him is, where does he play? Does he play linebacker? Does he play strong safety? Can he, he can play free safety, but yes, he's best as the box strong safety. But him going to the Bengals, I think, is they'll use him as a Swiss Army knife, a do-it-all type player, and play all over the field for them. And I think that he's going to end up being a star no matter where he goes, because I think that he's going to be able to just play. He's going to be able to play excessively well no matter where you put him, because he's just a pure-hearted football player. And I think that he understands the game very well. He's a student of the game. I think he's a senior. Was he a senior?
That sounds right. I feel like he
so
played
he's
for
a 4. I think
yeah.
He's damn near a 4-year starter. So you just don't get that every year in the NFL draft, and you get this for the Bengals as they look to rebuild that defense.
Yep. And then next up with the Miami Dolphins, the Dolphins are the definition this year of just take whatever and it'll be good for you.
Best player available.
At absolutely every position you could see them taking, aside from maybe running back, and it being almost an instant improvement to their team. So when you have a situation like that where you just take best player available, I know it doesn't make a ton of sense, but I think that they actually end up ending the Styles slide and going with Sonny Styles.
Back.
I mean, yes, off-ball linebacker is not their biggest need right now. Probably the best part of their defense last year was their off-ball linebackers. But, right here, you get a guy who could easily be a top 5 pick, and you're getting him at 11. you can move him around a little bit, maybe play around with some of the other off-ball linebackers you have, maybe see what Sonny Styles can do as a pass rusher, or play him as almost more of a safety because that's what he played at Ohio State before they moved him to linebacker this year. I mean, he's not quite as, it's funny, I don't know if this makes any sense. It makes a little sense in my head. He's not as versatile as Caleb Downs, but he is a little more play anywhere than Caleb Downs, I feel like, because he's got a little bit more of that size that you can use him a little bit more as a dedicated chess piece instead of kind of changing him per game or per
matchup.
Yeah, exactly. So Sonny Styles you just take here because you're getting the best player available, because you need everything. So take the best.
Yeah, they take the best player available here, stop his slide in the NFL draft. And, this was the combine warrior this year, the guy that really started the combine. So we'll see how he turns out. Sometimes those guys don't always work out. You think about Vernon Golston when you talk about Sonny Styles, who was really one of the biggest draft busts for the Jets. So I think Sonny Styles maybe does better because he's got a more defensive-minded coach down in Miami, so maybe he has a little better success. But we'll see if he's definitely has the build for it. But we'll see if he's able to put it all on the field.
Of course. So now moving down to the New Orleans Saints for the second time, not because it's their second pick, but because they moved down last time. And this time I have them sticking in this spot, and I have them going with Jordan Tyson, wide receiver out of Arizona State. So now I know, and I completely agree with the fact that Jordan Tyson falls down my board. I'm not that high on Tyson because of the injury concerns. You just don't know. You know what you're going to get from him, but you don't know how often you're going to get it from him, because there's so many questions about the nagging injuries with things like the hamstrings, the past major injuries. I think he's had 2 torn ACLs, if I'm not mistaken, in his career. So it just brings up so many huge question marks for a guy like him. But a lot of experts, if you watch the tape, will say that he's probably the best wide receiver in this class, but the injuries just completely hinder him. So right here, I look at this as a kind of a situation of it only takes one team. I talk about that a lot with the draft, where maybe there's a guy who's got a ton of upside but is a huge risk or has prior injury concerns like Jordan Tyson, and everyone thinks he's going to fall. But it only takes one team to believe in him and to say, let me go get my guy. And I think that that's what happens here. I think that they get a running mate to go with Olave and get another weapon for their young quarterback in Tyler Show.
Yeah, it's surprising that they go Tyson over Lemon. I like Lemon better, but depending, again, this all is, we talk about how teams value these players differently, and perhaps the Saints value Jordan Tyson more than Mekhi Lemon, who is a different build of wide receiver and a different type of wide receiver. They're not the same type of player. So Jordan Tyson to the Saints makes sense because he's able to line up with Chris Olave, who has shown that another Ohio State wide receiver that has shown that he can be very productive in the NFL. And when you get him on the other side, it'll be easy for Jordan Tyson to at least get the matchup to get open and prove that he can play in the NFL as long as he can stay healthy.
Yeah, and then the reason I went Tyson here over Lemon is because of the way the Saints do their offense. So they like to rotate guys to the slot a lot, and a lot of the times they use a bigger slot, whether that's like little Jordan Humphrey as a receiver they use in the slot a lot, Jawan Jennings as a tight end they use in the slot a lot, kind of moving him out. So if you go get Mekhi Lemon, you're getting a smaller, more dedicated slot, where with Tyson you get that more of a outside boundary wide receiver. So that's why I went with him here. But do not worry, because the Mekhi Lemon slide does not last long. I have the Los Angeles Rams, the 13th overall pick, going back-to-back receivers and taking Mekhi Lemon because they are the complete opposite of the Saints. The Saints kind of use their slots in a way where they rotate through. They already have those slots. And the Rams don't do that. They have boundary wide receivers, and they are in desperate need of a slot wide receiver. So you go get a dedicated slot guy like Mekhi Lemon. You let Puka Nacua and Devontae Adams wreak absolute havoc on the outside, and then just let Mekhi Lemon be that silent assassin, find zones in the defense, be a chain mover and get you the first downs. He's not going to get those huge explosive plays, but like I just said, he's going to get first downs for you. He's going to get a lot of catches. And though he's not the biggest or best blocker, he's a very willing blocker. And the Rams want their wide receivers to be willing, to be physical, and he plays bigger than his size, and he is very willing to do that. So I think McVay and that offense will like that.
Yes, this will be very dangerous for the Rams if Mekhi Lemon falls to them, because he's going to be one heck of a player in the NFL, and he's going to be one great slot receiver. And then you rotate them around with Puka Nacua, Devontae Adams. Who knows with Nacua what happens? He's in rehab.
Forgot about
that. Who knows how long he's going to be there? Maybe just for the summer. Then he'll come back for the fall. But you need another wide receiver because of that, because you just don't know, and it could change how he plays possibly. So you get another young wide receiver to go along with this group, and you let him learn from veteran Devontae Adams, and you get one heck of a wide receiver who I think is another potential offensive rookie of the year, especially if he falls to this team.
Yeah, this is such a good matchup for him. Like you said, truly, truly scary. So now moving on to 14 with the Baltimore Ravens. They are sticking and picking for me, and they are going with a guard. I have them taking Venga Owane, the guard out of Penn State, and the consensus best offensive guard in this draft class. Offensive guard has become an increasingly premium position. They used to kind of be dime a dozen throwaway position, but people are really realizing how important a guard can be, especially on a run-first team, which is exactly what the Ravens are. I mean, Derrick Henry is getting older. Lamar Jackson is getting older. You saw their run game struggle last year. So get some young juice on that offensive line and find a way to improve that run game here with the best offensive guard in this draft.
Yes, the first or the top guard finally goes off the board, and it's to a team that I really expect for him to go to because they need that interior offensive line help. They lost Tyler Linderbaum. They're set at tackles, but they need that interior, and that interior needs to be rebuilt, and they're going to rebuild it through the draft. And I expect them to take maybe a few offensive linemen in the draft this year, but they take the first one in the first round, and I think they get the top guard in the draft and one of the top offensive linemen all around.
For sure. Now moving on to 15 here, I have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I have them sticking and picking, and I'll be honest, I moved a little bit what I would do compared to predictive on this one, but it's because I wanted to find a way to get this guy a little higher than he's been on a lot of other mock drafts I've seen from him, because I really, really like him. I have them going with edge Keldrick Falk out of Auburn. I absolutely love this guy. He is so young, so big, and so talented. A lot of people knock him and say that he can't really rush the passer, but if you look at him, though he did have 0 sacks last year, there's definitely no argument there. The year before, he had 7 sacks, which is pretty damn good production in college, especially in the SEC, where you're going against some of the best tackles and best overall competition week in and week out. This guy is an automatic improvement in the run game. They run a 3-4 there in Tampa Bay, and he can be an inside-outside pass rusher, an automatic improvement in the run game. And I think he has huge pass rush upside. One of my favorite things about this guy is kind of a crazy stat. He doesn't turn 21 until I think it's, oh gosh, I can't remember exactly what week now, but it's still after the season starts. I don't think he turns 21 until week 3 or 4 of the NFL season. So, I mean, if they win one of their first games, he can't even celebrate his first NFL win with a beer. Like, isn't that's such a crazy thought? So I think the mix of what he can do for you right now, plus the huge potential and upside in the future, makes this guy worth a top half of the draft pick.
This would be kind of a surprise and maybe a reach in some terms, but Keldrick Falk was another combine warrior that did really well at the combine. And even though, like you said, he didn't have any sacks last year, he was able to produce and get 7 of them in his junior year, and he's another 4-year guy. So you get, or no, he must not be a 4-year guy
I think he's young.
because he's that young. So and that means he's probably a redshirt sophomore.
I believe that is
And
the case.
so that means his freshman year was the year he got the 7 sacks. So maybe they got him a little bit figured out, and he just needs to advance his game. And I think that he'll have a good place to go in Tampa Bay, where he'll learn from.
He's a true junior.
Junior.
So same as redshirt sophomore, he just didn't redshirt as freshman.
Yeah, yep. So sophomore year he had the 7 sacks, and then junior year he had the decline in production, which is leading to his fall. But the combine rose him back up. So I've seen him go, as high as this, but also as low as second round. So he's another guy where it just depends on where you value him, because he's one of those second round prospects in my eyes, but he could be a first round pick because of the way the draft falls this year.
Yeah, he's one of my favorite prospects. I'd like if he fell to the Vikings. Vikings don't really need edge. They need a lot of things other than edge, actually. But oh my God, I wouldn't mind at all if I got Kellen to fall. But moving on here to 16 and the New York Jets. This one, I don't overly agree with a ton, but it's something I've been seeing a lot, and a lot of rumors I've been hearing from kind of the stuff I watch and the experts and the articles I read. I have the Jets here going receiver and picking up Omar Cooper Jr., wide receiver out of Indiana. It just makes so much sense for them to get a receiver, and Omar Cooper Jr. is a really good complement to Garrett Wilson, because Garrett Wilson is much more of a polished route runner. He's not going to do a ton after the catch for you, but he's constantly going to get open, and Omar Cooper is going to be the yin to that yang. Maybe he's not the greatest route runner, but you find a way to scheme the ball in this guy's hand, and he makes things happen in the long run. He's so fun to watch. He's so small, but just bounces off tackles. It's some of the hits that he takes and just absolutely shrugs off as his size are just insane to see. So I think he's going to be a really fun piece of this offense and a really good complement to Garrett Wilson.
Yeah, the Jets finally take a receiver, and it's a good one in Omar Cooper, who I think was the more the star of the Indiana football team than Fernando Mendoza, because they have 2 possible first-round wide receivers, and Omar Cooper and Elijah Sherratt. So we'll see where they go. This is another player where I've seen as high as first round, but as low as second round. So it's just such a weird draft. It's so funny. This was such a hard draft to pick. And so for this draft, for Omar Cooper to go to the Jets, I think that he'll be a really good player, because Garrett Wilson will get most of the attention. And because of that, I think it'll be the time for Omar Cooper to shine, because he was always a reliable with his hands, maybe not the greatest after the catch, but very reliable with his hands, and that's what the Jets need.
Yeah, this draft is so fun because Cal and I were just kind of talking about this before, but I have a number of situations in my mock where I look at it and maybe a team says, oh, I think that this team is going to take this player that we want. So we're going to jump ahead of that team so we can get this player. But with the way this draft has so many question marks in it, and the way all these prospects are so differently valued by different teams and different people, I think there's a lot of times where a team might jump in front of a different team to pick a guy when that team wasn't ever going to take the guy at all. So they kind of just jumped up for nothing. But sometimes to go get your guy, or not even sometimes, all the time in the NFL draft, if you got a guy, go get him. Don't risk it, because you don't want to see that guy become a superstar and know that you should have got him and should have found a way to get him. But moving on here to the second half of the draft, starting with the Detroit Lions, I think that they should be throwing a party in the draft room right now, because their obvious biggest hole, biggest need right now is left tackle. And they get what is arguably the best left tackle in the draft right now, and definitely the draft or left tackle with the most upside compared to current floor. They go with Monroe Freeling, left tackle out of Georgia. This guy is just an absolutely massive human being, which gives him his automatic floor right now, just because someone that big is going to find ways to stop people, whether he's efficient and structurally sound or not. But then you get him with a good offensive team and a good offensive line, gritty team like the Detroit Lions, and let him learn that. Let him get some of those basics down. Let him learn from a guy like Penei Sewell, who is a very similar situation to Monroe Freeling when he first came out. I think it's not only a perfect fit for the Lions, but a perfect fit for Freeling himself as well.
Yeah, I like Freeling to the Lions here. It's a best player available and fits a team need. So it does both. It knocks both of those out of the park. And he's probably the most athletic offensive lineman because, again, another Georgia player, very athletic, very raw. We'll see how he does in the NFL. But as far as him going to the Lions, I think it's a perfect fit for the Lions, at least if he falls to them, because they need that left tackle and that athletic left tackle because of all of the defensive edge rushers they have to face in the NFC North. So they have to rebuild those offensive tackle room in order to try to supplant the top of the NFC North again. So we'll see if Monroe Freeling falls this far, because he's one of the top offensive tackles and most athletic ones. Last year we saw a run of defensive tackles, if you remember. I think this year we see a run of offensive tackles, and a lot of them are going to go early, and then a lot of them are going to go late. They have second round grades. So we'll see if Monroe Freeling's one of the ones with the first round grade, and he falls right to the perfect spot to the Detroit Lions.
A run of offensive tackle, maybe some unplanned foreshadowing right there from Callan. And but moving on here past that, I have the Minnesota Vikings. If you remember at the beginning of this, I said that I tweaked a few things to get something I wanted for the Minnesota Vikings. And if you heard me say something else a little bit earlier in this draft too, I think Jamard McCoy is the top corner in this draft, even though he didn't play last year. And I have the Vikings taking him right here. Out of nowhere, the far and away consensus has been us taking Dylan Thieneman, which makes sense considering Harrison Smith's age and the way we use our offense with some single high in there and the way Flores uses so much rotation. But I've been thinking that for, I don't know, when was Kyle Hamilton drafted? 2021? I've been thinking that for a long time now, and it's yet to happen. So now that I don't think it's going to happen is probably exactly when it will. But right here, I have them taking a swing and somebody who I think has huge upside with Jamad McCoy. If you look at his 2024 film, he was playing like a top 5 pick. And then it was either very late in the season or very early in the offseason. I can't remember. He tore his ACL, which took him out until about halfway of last year's 2025 college football season. And then it was a little weird, but Tennessee was already kind of out of the playoff race, so they just agreed for McCoy not to play. So that totally tanked his draft stock, because how can you take a first-round pick on a guy who you haven't seen play football in a year and is coming off a major injury? But I didn't get a chance to actually watch his pro day, but I've heard really good things about his pro day at Tennessee. I heard that he moved super, super well, and I know that he ran a 4.3 840, which is blazing speed for a corner, especially of his skill set. So I think that he is totally worth this pick for the Vikings. We've taken first-round corners in the past that didn't really pan out, but I think this is the mold breaker here.
Yeah, this would be different than what the consensus mock draft has seen. I don't really know a whole lot about Jamad McCoy because he missed last year, or pretty much, almost all of last year, if not for a couple of games. But so I know that he is one of the top corners, or was looked at as one of the top corners last year before the injury, and then he came back to school and the injury happened. So it'll be interesting to see where he falls if he is able to make it into the first round because of that injury history. He's another wild card. So he definitely looked like a good player his 2024 season and looked like he fit in the NFL, but it's hard to come back off of those injuries, and we'll see how it affects him and if he's able to become a first round pick.
Yeah, for sure. God, it's a risk. I won't act like it's not a risk, but I would love it so much. I'll be so excited if this actually happens on draft night. But ironically, as I just mentioned, the consensus pick for the Vikings, Dylan Thieneman, does not have to wait for very long after the Vikings pick, because I have the Panthers taking Dylan Thieneman right here. He's not my favorite prospect, but he does bring a very unique skill set in where he has so much range. Definitely the most range as a safety in this draft. Probably some pretty equal with some of the best in the NFL right now type of range. And when I say range for a free safety, I mean in the way where he can play single high, where he's the only safety in the middle of the field. And if the quarterback throws a deep ball to the right side of the field, it is insanely fast how quickly Dylan Thieneman can flip his hips, go back there, and support from the middle of the field. And that is a huge skill set to have on any defense in the NFL and can really help out with run support, can really help out with pass rush if you're able to move those safeties up a little bit. So to have a guy like that is super invaluable for a defense. I don't think it's quite worth this high of a pick, but a lot of experts have it this way. This is a predictive draft. I'm going to have the Panthers taking him here.
Yeah, Dylan Thieneman, he's going to be a good player. He reminds me of Dirty Dan Sorensen. And Dirty Dan Sorensen was a longtime player for the Chiefs. Won a couple Super Bowls with them.
Super Bowl rings, yep.
Yep. So I think that he's going to be that type of free safety. Just kind of the dirty, not a dirty player, but do the dirty work of being that free safety role, being the ball hawk that he is, and then also playing in the box when he needs to. And his closing speed on that range is just top end. And when you see it in the NFL, you'll be surprised because he's able to fly, and he's going to catch up and get a couple of interceptions this year. That's for sure. No matter which team he goes to, he'll have a couple picks, and he could end up being the rookie interception leader.
Yeah, because that range isn't only sideline to sideline. The way he can come up and support in the run so quickly is really nice as well. Mm-hmm. In my opinion, this guy was the combine warrior this year. I think that he is far and away the guy who benefited most and moved up the board the most from the combine this year. But now moving on to the Dallas Cowboys with their second first-round pick, the one that I think that they'll be able to keep, even though they did move up in my draft earlier. And I have them going defense here again. And I have them going with a guy that just feels like a Dallas pick. I don't know what it is, but I feel like a lot of the times they've picked a guy like this, a little older, a little bit more of an instant impact. Jerry Jones is the head of this team, so in his mind, they are always in a win now mode, so they don't mind taking an older guy. I have them going with Akeem Mesidor, the pass rusher out of Florida. You just get an instant impact guy here. Not very high of a ceiling, especially at that age. Not a ton of longevity. I mean, by the time he signs his second contract, he's already going to be 29, pushing 30 years old, which you don't love for a rookie. But he's got a huge floor right now and just provide something that the Cowboys don't have and can at least pretend like Jerry Jones is going to try to fill in with a giant gaping hole of pass rush that Micah Parsons left.
Yeah, I love that you go and trade Micah Parsons to draft an edge rusher.
Who's practically the same age.
But anyways, so if the Cowboys do this, yes, they fill their hole, and it was left by the Micah Parsons edge rushing, and they get maybe the more instant and pro-ready prospect compared to Ruben Bain, his running mate in college. But because of Akeem Mesidor's age and his experience, you kind of get the more pro-ready prospect, the more instant impact guy. And I think that he maybe early on gets more sacks than Ruben Bain. Look for him to have more production early on because he'll have that experience. And then the way the Cowboys play, they blitz a lot, and I expect them to have a few sacks. Like I said, especially early on, he'll get this early sack lead.
For sure. Now moving on here to the Pittsburgh Steelers. I love what I did with the Steelers in this draft as a whole because I have them just taking an absolute shock here. I don't think I've seen anybody do this, but as I was thinking about it last night, maybe it was the brain fatigue setting in, but I was absolutely getting giddy about this idea that has a very small chance of even actually happening. But I have the Pittsburgh Steelers going with the top tight end in this draft and picking up Kenyon Sadiq. Now, the Steelers right now have a lot of question at that receiver position, not at tight end, but at receiver. They have DK Metcalf. They go out and trade for Michael Pittman, but you just don't really know what they're going to do with that last spot. And I think Sadiq becomes such a fun fill in there because, first and foremost, if you want Sadiq to go play in the slot, he can do that. He can pretty much be a slot wide receiver very, very easily. But another really, really fun thing about this offense that I kind of schemed up and liked was last year the Los Angeles Rams found so much success in 13 personnel, which means you have 3 tight ends on the field at a time. And just the thought of having Pat Freiermuth, big old Darnell Washington playing as an inline tight end, and then having Kenyon Sadiq as more of that slot outside type tight end was so fun to me. It opens up so many really fun kind of schemes and formations that you can put in your goal line formation for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Is it the needed pick right now? No. But assuming Rodgers is going to come back, you have a small window right here. If you don't hire Mike McCarthy to throw yourself into a rebuild, so you go get yourself a win now guy in Kenyon Sadiq.
Yeah, this is a player I really like in this year's draft. I've had him go in different spots each time, but I think that he's going to be a really good player. I've heard reports of teams looking at him as a wide receiver over a tight end. So he's had kind of that interviews of a wide receiver over a tight end. I think that's what they were pertaining to. But if he goes to the Steelers here, where they already have Jonnu Smith, Darnell Washington, and Freiermuth, you add this weapon to there, and wow, you have a really tall receiving unit.
Yeah. And then now moving on to 22, another pick that I absolutely love. I'm telling you, at 9:45, 10 o'clock last night, I was absolutely cooking things up in my brain right now. Probably dumb. You guys are all probably going to yell at me for it, but I am just almost giddy talking about it. I'm getting just excited as now sharing it as I was doing it last night. But I have a trade here. Looking at the Chargers, their big need is offensive line. There's just not, or more specifically offensive guard even, I should say. And there's just not a ton of value right there. You could easily go Caleb Lomu or a guy, or Caden Proctor, a tackle that could be a swing tackle for you or move into guard. That'd be a really good pick for them. I don't think it'd be terrible at all. But I think that a team rings Los Angeles's phone more than Los Angeles looks to move back. And I think that team is the New England Patriots moving up right here. Again, just a disclaimer I'm going to make every time I make a trade. Don't look too much into what the actual details are going to end up being. I'm just kind of clicking around to get a trade pushed through, whatever. But I think that the Patriots offer a pretty package right here to move up. That'd be 9 spots, if I'm doing my math correctly, from 31 up to 22. And this is one of those situations I was just talking about earlier where they look at the team that's picking next and go get a guy that they want who they think that team is going to pick. I have seen a ton of reports of the Eagles really liking this guy and taking this guy. It's an offensive tackle. The Eagles always do this with their offensive line where they kind of pick a guy before the current guy actually leaves, pick a guy to develop and take over that role in a year or two. And I think that the Patriots want to start doing that too. So they jump the Philadelphia Eagles to go get Arizona State offensive tackle Max Ehanchenor, however you pronounces it. I don't know how to pronounce it, but this guy is such a fun prospect right here. The cool thing about this guy, he has only been playing football for, I believe it is 4 years. If I'm not mistaken, he is a college junior at Arizona State, and he started playing football his senior year, his last year of high school. So if you look at what this guy is already able to do and the physical capabilities on this guy, I'm going to undo the pick so I can actually pull him up too. Oh, so he is a senior, so maybe it's been 5 or 6 years of him playing football. But what I really wanted to look at was right here. 6'5", almost 6'6", and 321 pounds with insane movement speeds or movement ability. If you look at that size plus what he is already able to do and how solid of a tackle he is after only playing football for this long, and then think about what you can do to develop this guy, I think it definitely makes it worth jumping up and getting him here. And I think it makes it a great, great pick for the New England Patriots and a good move for the Chargers as well, because they can go get a guard or a different tackle later in the draft and pick up some additional capital. So a true win-win here and a fun, fun pick.
Yeah, I was just reading there about Max there, and he didn't play any football in high school, and he came from Nigeria.
Oh, is that what it? Okay,
Yeah,
that's what it was. So it is only 4 years.
Yeah, so he's only played while he was in college, and he's already checked all the physical boxes of what an offensive tackle should look like. So he's a very raw prospect in my eyes, and probably a year or two from really starting in the NFL. But like you said, where the Patriots are in that situation where they're able to draft and develop, and they do it here with a very young, raw prospect. And Max Iheanacho,
Yachinor, something like that.
Iheanacho.
But yeah, it just gives you so much to do, because if you look at what happened with Will Campbell last year, he got hurt, or he was a very, very solid starter to start the year. He got hurt and missed some time, and they kind of had to rush him back because they didn't really have anybody else. And though he was still doing okay, he was obviously just not as good as he was to start the year. So you get Max Iheanacho in here. If you want to maybe move him to guard and see what he does at guard at first, you can do that. And now you have an instant starter at guard. If you want to develop him more as a tackle and move him to the right side, which he did play on the right side, you can have him play the right side and replace a aging Morgan Moses next year, who, if I'm not mistaken, only has 1 year left on his contract with the Patriots. And if something happens with Will Campbell and you really decide that you're going against your word and you're going to move him to guard, maybe even you move Iheanacho over to left tackle and see what he can do there. Because he's so young, he's so raw, you can kind of mold him over on that left side. Just endless possibilities with this guy, and just a great way to continue to protect a young quarterback in Drake May. So now, sitting here with the Eagles, they just had a guy that I truly, truly think they are going to, or were going to take in my situation, in Max Iheanacho. So now they're sitting here like, well, shit, what do we do now? There's just lots of things that can go on. They don't really need a pure left tackle because they already have Jordan Mailata. They don't overly need interior offensive line, but it never hurts to have a few extra of those. But if you look at that right tackle spot with Lane Johnson's a very good right tackle, but he's also a very, very old left tackle. He's somewhere between 35 and 40. I don't think he's quite 40, but he's at the very least 35. I think maybe 37. But so you're looking for a top right tackle here. If you needed left tackle, I go Caleb Lomu, no doubt. But Caleb Lomu, I'm pretty sure, at least in his time at Utah, only played left tackle. So do you really want to take him and try to move him around? You don't really want to do that. So you go with the guy here from Clemson. You go Blake Miller, who played right tackle the entire time he was at Clemson. You get your future replacement, just like I talked about with the Eagles a second ago. They always draft a replacement a year or two before the guy in the spot right now actually leaves. Blake Miller is that. You let him learn between a very similar tackle to his skill set in Lane Johnson and just see what he can do for your future.
Yeah, I like Blake Miller here. He's another low-end first-round prospect. A guy who I expect to be taken in the first round because I think there'll be a run of him this year. But this is right around the spot where I expect him to go in that mid-20s area. And I think this is a perfect fit situation for him to go where he doesn't have to start right away and can learn from one of the best in Lane Johnson, and how to be an NFL right tackle.
For sure. And then to finish the run of offensive tackles that I alluded to a little earlier. Now with their top pick, the Browns did not go with the left tackle like a lot of people thought they would in Monroe Freeling. I've seen that mock there a lot. So you got to get your left tackle eventually. But I don't go Caleb Lomu here. I think that they are, I don't want to say they have the honor of being able to kind of take a risk on upside, because it's not an honor. It's more because they're not a win now team and not a very good team. But the way you become a better team is by taking some swings, taking some risks. So I have them going with Alabama offensive tackle Caden Proctor. This guy is a very split prospect. He has so much and so high of a ceiling and so low of a floor because he's another guy just like Ianchinor who's just a physical freak with just an insane physical frame. I need to start looking at the size of these guys before I'm picking them. But yeah, 6'6", almost 6'7", 352 pounds, so even heavier than Ianchinor was, which is just absolutely insane to think about considering his movement skills. He moves so well that they even played him at tight end relatively often in goal line scenarios there in Alabama. That's how good of a mover he is. But his fundamentals, his foundation, his lack of effort just brings so many questions with him. But I think just sheerly off of size and the highs that you've seen on film alone, he's worth a top pick here and worth a risk for the Browns.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a risky pick. I don't know if he fits the NFL mold. He might be a little bit too heavy. He seems more of a guard because of that being over 350. But I think that he could play offensive tackle or guard. But I think that if he tries to stick to offensive tackle, he's going to have to drop a few pounds and be a little more athletic than he lets on compared to the likes of like Morgan Freeling, who's much more athletic. But either way, the Browns need some offensive line help, and this is a nice prospect to get. And I think that maybe on the Browns, he might fit very well there.
I do agree with that, but luckily, they just lost Wyatt Teller, which leaves a huge hole at guard. So if he really doesn't work out at tackle, you get a top guard late in the first round, which is a hell of a consolation prize, in my opinion. But moving on here, we have 25 with the Bears. I just really didn't know what to do with the Bears, so I'm not going to lie. I kind of just broke down a little bit. I kind of just went consensus and rumors on this one, and I've heard so many rumors and seen so many picks from top experts. And the reason I talk about these rumors and say consensus picks a lot is because these guys like your Adam Scheffers and your Daniel Jeremiah's and Bucky Brooks, they do these predictive mock drafts and they aren't going just off what they think. They go off of what they're hearing every day from the people in the NFL, in these organizations that they actually talk to and get information from. So you can gather a lot of really good rumors and information just by looking at these guys' mock drafts because as average Joes, they have this access to all this information that we can never even imagine having, where they can text a head coach practically and get their thoughts on what they think of a guy. So right here, I really lean into that, and I go with something I've been seeing a lot for the Bears, which I don't overly love, but I've seen it a lot. It is Missouri edge rusher Zion Young. I think that it's very likely they go edge here, and I think a lot of the top edge rushers right now are gone. So I lean on what I've heard from experts, and I lean on a guy with a lot of explosion here in Zion Young and a lot of good upside in the NFL for the Chicago Bears.
Yeah, I expected Zion Young to go in more 30s, maybe even early second round. But the Bears do need edge help, and they go with the best one available. And Zion Young, even though it may be a reach at 25, maybe you trade down, you can get him in the early second round. But if the rumors are saying that Zion Young is their guy, then they stick and they go and pick Zion Young and fit him, plug and play him right into that edge offense or edge defensive end role for the Bears.
Yeah, and he kind of has a very similar size and play style to Montez Sweat, who they have on that other end of that offensive or defensive line right now. So I just think those are really good bookend edge rushers to have the way they treat and run their 4-3 defense that they have. So moving on here to the Buffalo Bills, I got one that I had way long ago, and a lot of experts had this way long ago, and it feels like a lot of people have gotten away from it, and I don't really know why. I have them taking KC Concepcion, the burner vertical wide receiver out of Texas A&M. And it's just what this offense needs right now. It made so much sense when everyone was saying it that I completely agreed. And then everyone stepped away from it. And I'm like, no, I'm staying back here. It just makes too much sense for them not to do. He's one of the more straight line speed over the top guys in this draft right now. He brings a lot of versatility in the return game as well. The Bills don't really have a dedicated punt and kick returner right now. So he can slot in at least at that punt returner position and provide some spark and electricity, try to get that great offense they have there in Buffalo, some good field position off of a punt return. But I mean, it just makes a lot of sense for me right here. And look what Brandon Cooks did on that playoff run. He's the same way as Casey Concepcion. He's a smaller, more vertical receiver, and he became Josh Allen's practically favorite target the playoffs went on. I mean, he had the most catches in that game they lost. I'm almost positive of it. And he almost won it with that crazy catch towards the end of the game. But nonetheless, you get a guy because Brandon Cooks isn't your future option. So you do get your future option here in Casey Concepcion.
Yeah, I like Concepcion. I think he's going to be a great NFL receiver. He fits today's NFL wide receiver mold as a great deep field, downfield, vertical threat. And then you got Josh Allen to pair him with, who has a cannon of an arm. And I think that Concepcion could have a great career in Buffalo if it falls this way for him. Where Josh Allen needs some younger weapons to throw to. He's kind of got tight ends set with Kincaid and Dawson Knox. Now he needs to get some young wide receivers in there to really start building chemistry with, and look out for him to really make an impact later in the season once that chemistry is built.
For sure. Now here we move on to the San Francisco 49ers at 27, and I get a little bit of a grin on my face because this is my reach of the draft. I think that, I mean, I say it all the time. You've heard me say it before. I'm a huge believer that history repeats itself. And if you look at just last year, the San Francisco took not a giant reach, but a pretty damn big reach when they took Ricky Pearsall out of Florida late in the first round. And though Ricky Pearsall ended up being a very, very, very solid wide receiver, that wide receiver core as a whole is still very questionable. It's almost a guarantee at this point that Brandon Ayuk isn't going to be a 49er next year. And he wasn't really a 49er this year. No. So they still have a huge gap in wide receiver right here. And when it comes to wide receiver, it's a real toss-up. It's kind of just a pick your poison. And I have them going a little bit down the board and picking Jermaine Bernard, wide receiver out of Florida. And now this is a reach, don't get me wrong, but I really like the way he fits into this offense. And he is the Deebo Samuel's replacement that the San Francisco 49ers offense has been looking for so long. This is your do-it-all type guy. Line him up in the backfield. Line him up in the slot. Line him up as a boundary receiver. He's going to find ways to get open, and you can find ways to get him the ball. He's just such a fun chess piece to use, and I think that this is their biggest need right now is wide receiver. Is Jermaine Bernard actually the wide receiver they end up taking? If they take a wide receiver at all with this first pick, maybe since it's such a deep class, they end up going in the second round. Maybe they wait and get Jermaine Bernard in the second round. But this is more of a go get your guy, which is exactly what they did with Ricky Pearsall last year. So history repeats itself.
I never thought of him as a Deebo Samuel replacement, but that makes perfect sense. And he fits perfectly with the 49ers because of that. Where I could see him being a first-round pick to the 49ers. Now, Jermaine Bernard he's not that great big build that the other Alabama Ryan Williams receiver is, but he is a great yards after catch guy. Where he will take the ball and run with it no matter where, whether it's in the backfield or on a screen or even on a shallow cross.
Yep. And then now moving on here, we'll kind of speed through these last couple of picks because they get at least a tad more obvious until I have some fun later. But right here, you look at this Texans team, just pick an offensive lineman. It's what they've needed for so long. And luckily for them, they have a pretty damn top offensive lineman still available. So they take Caleb Lumu out of Utah. His slide finally ends right here. They get what they've been looking for since they traded away Laramie Tunsil to the Washington Commanders and a good left tackle. Literally pick any lineman here, and I think it's a good pick for them. But in my scenario, in my mock draft, they end up getting a pretty good left tackle here in Lomu. Now moving on to the Kansas City Chiefs at 29. Just as I mentioned with filling in a gap of Laramie Tunsil, the Chiefs need to fill in a gap of Trent McDuffie. So I think that they go get a guy who I think is very similar to Trent McDuffie. in a Steve Spagnuolo's defense, it is so blitz happy that you need to find a guy who's really sticky in man coverage and can and is willing to go up and punch a receiver in the mouth and play some press. And I think that is exactly what Colton Hood, corner out of Tennessee, did last year. Now, Colton Hood coming into the season thought he was going to be a number 2 corner behind Jamad McCoy. But Jamad McCoy goes down with injury. He has to step up and be a number 1 corner, and he does that and more. He not only becomes a number 1 corner in Tennessee, he becomes one of the better corners across the nation in college football last year. He was really fun to watch, and I think that mindset of stepping up when you're needed is the Chiefs secondary to a T. So I think he's just such a good fit here in Kansas City and a really fun pick.
Yeah, I think that's a great fit for the Chiefs who need the defensive help after trading away Trent McDuffie. So I think that they get a first-round pick cornerback to replace a first-round pick cornerback. And they just do this recycling. And then in 4 years, they'll trade him to the Rams. And they'll pick the next top cornerback available in that first round. So we'll see how he does, if he really does have a similar career path. But I think that early on he'll be a star for the Chiefs.
Of course. And then now moving on here to the Miami Dolphins. Earlier in this draft, they get probably one of the biggest sliders, not number of picks down-wise, but just sheer talent-wise, and Sonny Styles. And now they fill in what probably is truly their biggest need on this team. Right now, their number 1 receiver there in Miami is Jalen Tolbert, maybe Malik Washington, just depending on how you look at it. So right here, kind of like I said with the Texans, you just take your pick for the Texans, it was take your pick at offensive line. For the Dolphins, it's just take your pick at wide receiver. Whoever you think is best out of this, you can pick. Whoever the Miami thinks is best, they will pick, of course, because they are the Miami Dolphins. I, for them, would personally go Chris Brazzell out of Tennessee. He's just a little bit more of a do-it-all guy. He's okay in the intermediate and short. He's really good as a burner. He's got really good length and pretty solid hands. So he's my pick here. Not a ton of reasoning behind it other than just the fact that he's a do-it-all guy, and that's what they need right now because he's one of their only guys in that wide receiver room right now, and I think he'll go well with more of a bigger body intermediate guy like Jalen Tolbert. So now moving on here to the final 2 picks with the Chargers, who moved down from 22 in a trade with the New England Patriots. They pick here at 31, get some additional draft capital, and still get one of their biggest needs in an offensive guard. Again, hate to sound like a broken record, but it's pretty much just whoever they deem to be the best offensive guard available right now. Chase Besantis, Emmanuel Pregnon, and I've even heard rumors of Keelan Rutledge moving up into the first round. I personally think the second best guard in this class is Emmanuel Pregnon out of Oregon. So that's who I have him going here. But exactly like I just said, you pick whoever you think is best. Chargers will pick whoever they think is best. This is who I think is best. And then now finally, the last pick in the draft, and I get to say it again, my favorite saying, I am a believer that history repeats itself. And I think something that you don't see overly often throughout the past, but something that you have seen multiple times is a team moving up into the last pick of the first round to pick a quarterback. So right here, I have a team moving up with the Seattle Seahawks. And that team, let me find the Seahawks quick, is going to be the Pittsburgh Steelers. I just said a little bit ago that I had so much fun picking for the Steelers in this draft. I have them going with the shocker and Kenyon Sadiq, and now I have them shocking people again and moving up into the first round to pick a quarterback. Wow, it really doesn't care what you do anymore. I literally clicked accept trade. I don't know if you saw that. I just traded 53 for 32 straight up, and I don't know why I pushed that through, but whatever. I'm not complaining. My same thing. I'm not actually trying to guess what they trade, but nonetheless, the Steelers move into the first round here, and they take the second quarterback off the board, Ty Simpson. A lot of people have talked about Ty Simpson going in the first round, and the Steelers make it happen here. If you look at what they have right now, they have Aaron Rodgers, who I think is going to come back. It seems like he's going to come back, but there's a chance he doesn't. And if he does come back, let's be honest, it's only going to be for one more year. So you get a guy who is either a future competitor with Will Howard or possibly a this year competitor with Will Howard. But you can't put yourself in a situation where Will Howard is a ride or die only situation.
Mm-hmm.
You got to give him some competition. You got to get a guy in there that can compete now or compete later, just depending on what Rodgers does. So I see history repeating itself in the veins of Teddy Bridgewater, in the veins of Lamar Jackson. The Steelers move up here and get Ty Simpson.
Ty Simpson in the first round. I wouldn't have thought that a month ago, but it seems to be very possible now. I've seen him in mock drafts to the Steelers at 21, so it's very possible. The need fits the position, so they're drafting in a spot of need, and they need a quarterback because they don't really have one. If Aaron Rodgers is your quarterback, because he's kind of all over the place, so. We'll see where he ends up, if he even ends up in Pittsburgh back with Mike McCarthy. It seems like they hired him to entice Rodgers.
Just debated Rodgers. Yeah. I thought the same thing.
So we'll see if it works out. But if they go Ty Simpson first round, then he could end up being the starter in week 1.
Yeah, and my favorite part about this pick is this draft this year is in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. So just imagine the crowd roar, whether good or bad, but regardless, the crowd roar that will happen when not only the Steelers move up, but then they take a possible quarterback of the future in Ty Simpson. Just absolute cinema. I don't know if you can draw it up any better. What you see on the screen right now is the official, exactly what's going to happen in the 2026 mock draft. Don't question anything about it. I got the script early. This is exactly what happens. But thank you all so much for the support. Make sure you stay tuned in until tomorrow when Callan goes over his official 2026 mock draft of exactly what's going to happen. Again, they're different, but don't question it. They're both exactly what's going to happen. But thank you all so much for watching this episode. Can't wait to see you all again tomorrow. But until then, don't forget
to eat the W.